Welcome, everyone. I'm going to call to order the meeting of May 13th of the Conejo Open Space Conservation Agency, and I hope you will all join me in the salute to the flag. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Thank you. May we have the roll call, please?
Person Bill de la Pena.
Present.
Director Fox. Absent. Director Gibson.
Here.
Director Jacobson.
Present.
Chairperson Skay.
Here. Our next item is public comments, but if you wanted to have comments on the work program, we can wait till that point. But if any of you have comments on other items on the agenda or not on the agenda, we'd ask you to fill out a speaker card. Don't see anybody jumping up. Absolutely. Written statements are fine. Sure. Let's go to committee reports and announcements. And first one is, actually the only one, is Trails Education Days from Conejo Open Space Trails Advisory Committee. Mr. Langton.
Good evening. Mark Langton, Newbury Park, Conejo Space Trails Advisory Committee. We had what we feel is probably the smoothest Trails Education Days within recent memory. The weather was perfect. All the kids seemed to be enjoying themselves. Once again, an extremely successful program. The teachers and the parents, especially the teachers, come in almost every year and remember how successful it was prior, and they're just always very complimentary and very appreciative. So all I can say is it went off really well. No heat problems this year. And other than that, it was really fun. And I will say that this was the first year that Joe Dillman was not involved. But he did show up. He made an appearance, and he's still around. A lot of people asked, why he wasn't there, and he said, "Oh, he's still around, just not here." So, other than that,
very good. Any questions of Mr. Langton? Thank you. I mean, we expected it to be perfect, but it's nice to hear.
Pretty good. And thanks to all of you who did volunteer. We saw a lot of your faces out there, and that was really, really nice to see.
Okay. We'll go to the consent calendar. We have 3 items, 2 sets of minutes, and the second reading of the Cosca ordinance. Do we have a motion for the consent calendar?
Move approval.
Do we have a second?
Second.
Thank you. Moved and seconded. Any discussion on consent? All in favor, please say aye. Aye. Any opposed? Any abstentions? Now this brings us to our main topic tonight, which is the workshop, an update to priority list of areas for potential purchase as open space. And I'll turn this over to Ms. Ford.
Thank you, Chair Skay, and good evening, members of the board and members of the public. I'll direct your attention to the screen for a PowerPoint presentation. We'll begin the workshop with a PowerPoint. Then we'll open it up to the board members for questions of staff, and then after that, we'll have the time for public questions, comments, and input, and then the board will go back and have the final discussion and vote on providing direction to staff. So we're here tonight to update Cosca's 2004 list of areas for potential purchase as public open space. Cosca's first priority list was approved by the board in 1996, and this list was based on areas that had been identified as possessing important open space resources in the city's open space element. Since 1996, the priority list has been updated approximately every 4 years. This time it's 5 years. And the priority list provides a framework for decisions related to open space purchases. And I should note that most of the open space in the Conejo Valley, which is about 15,000 acres, in fact was not protected through purchase. more than 80% of the open space was protected through the development review process, through dedications of open space, and other means. And so, in fact, most of our open space has not been purchased, but occasionally it is appropriate for us to purchase property, and this list serves as a guide in terms of prioritizing and identifying those parcels as the opportunities come up to purchase them. So the Cosca board held a public workshop in 1996, and after that workshop, 19 areas were identified and included on the first priority list. In 2000, the Cosca staff updated the list to reflect acquisitions and recent developments, and at that point, several areas were removed from the list because they had been protected or developed. Another public workshop was held in 2004, and several areas were removed and several areas were added at that workshop. And the resulting list from 2004 had 16 areas. And both of these lists are contained in the staff packet, which is available on the table up front, and the board members have it as well. So recently, the staff reviewed the most recent list, the 2004 list, and we removed any parcels or areas that had been developed or protected since 2004. And after that process, we came up with the draft 2009 list, and we also have a few recommendations for additions to the list, which we will discuss tonight. This map shows the 1996 priority list. The light green areas are the 19 priority areas that were identified at that time. May be hard to see. The 2004 priority list, this time the priority areas are shown in red, and the light green on this map is actually open space protected between 1996 and 2004. But you can see the red areas are the 2004 priority list areas. This list, although the parcels that we're highlighting on this map currently are very small and may be hard to see them. There is a hard copy of this map in your packet. What staff did recently, when we took a look at the parcels from the 2004 list that either had been protected or developed, on this map, the blue parcels are the parcels that have been protected since 2004, and they were identified as priorities in 2004. And there are a few very small orange parcels which have been developed since 2004, and they had been priorities in 2004. I'll go into a little bit more detail about those in a minute. So since the original list in 96, we've protected over 2,300 acres, about 152 parcels, and 1,600 of those acres, which is 71%, were priority areas that were identified on the 1996 list. So most of the land that we protected since the original list was on the list. However, obviously some parcels were not identified on the list, but they were protected anyway. This map shows the light green on this map is the open space that was protected since 1996. You can see it's quite a bit of land all throughout the city. And since 2004, the last revision of the list, we've protected open space in 5 of the 16 priority areas from the 2004 list, and that's 9 parcels totaling 55 acres. And including areas that were not priorities on the 2004 list, 428 acres have been protected since 2004. This map shows the open space protected since 2004. Let's see. You'll notice we have 4 parcels up here in the Mount Clough area. 3 of them were purchased using funds from the city and from Santa Monica Mountains Conservancy, and also Cosca funds as well. There was also a conservation easement placed on a portion of a 4th parcel. We have 2 parcels over here in the Vallecito area that were purchased at a tax sale. We also have I believe it's a 54-acre parcel down here that was protected through the development review process. Actually, it's in the unincorporated Ventura County in Lake Sherwood, and that was dedicated to Cosca on the tract map. There are 6 acres here in the Hillcrest open space, and we've colored Rancho Potrero here, 306 acres, as protected. In January of 2008, the Cosca Board, CRPD Board, and the City Council approved the conceptual plan for Rancho Potrero, which included pre-zoning of that area to open space. So we decided to code it as protected. This photo is taken from site, oh, I forgot to mention site I apologize. That's a 8.7 acre parcel. Go right back here. This small parcel right here, near Rancho Potrero. This image is taken from the site I parcel looking towards Rancho Potrero. And this photo is also taken from the edge of the site I parcel looking west towards the ocean. This photo is of the Mount Clef Ridge, where I mentioned 3 parcels were purchased and a conservation easement was required in 2006 and 2007. This photo is looking out over the Pepper Tree Playfields and the Vallecito Mobile Home Park towards the Vallecito open space area. The 2 tax sale parcels were protected back here on this hillside, and also one over on this hillside in this area. So on the draft 2009 open space priority list, we have identified 14 areas and also a category for trail crossing improvements and access. And this trail crossing improvements category is essentially a policy statement which states that sometimes even if parcels don't have other open space resources and open space values, that they do need to be purchased, or easements need to be purchased for trail access purposes. Although usually trail access is required during the development review process, and most of our trail easements are acquired in this way. We, as I mentioned earlier, staff is also recommending 3 potential additions, and that would, we'll discuss that more later. That would bring the total to 15 areas, and 2 areas would be expanded. So the areas on the list, and the list is included in your packet, they're sorted into 3 priority groups, and these priority groups are based on open space resource value, and that means the value of the habitat, the archaeological resources, the historical resources, the water resources, whether it's in the ring of open space or provides trail connections, or scenic value. And also, the priority groups consider the degree of protection that we can expect through the development review process, as well as the likely purchase cost, whether or not it's going to be prohibitively expensive or more reasonable to purchase. This map shows the 2009 draft priority list parcels coded by their priority group. The priority group 1, which is the highest priority, are the red parcels. The second priority, which is medium priority, are the orange parcels, and the yellow parcels are the lowest priority. The number 1 priority group, which is the highest priority, this means these areas have especially important open space resources, and the resources aren't likely to be adequately protected through the development review process. And because of the value of the open space resources, and when I mean value, I mean the extreme habitat value or the archaeological resources or other resources, because of these values, 100% protection is desirable. And therefore, the parcels in priority group 1 are the highest priority for purchase if the seller is willing to sell, and of course if the price is agreeable and funds are available. The priority group 2 These parcels also contain important open space resources. However, the resources may be adequately protected during the development review process, or even if the resources are not likely to be protected completely through the development review process, the areas may be too prohibitively expensive to purchase. And in the case of these priority group 2, partial purchase or partial protection of the open space area is acceptable. The third priority group can have lower open space resource value, or we believe the resources can be adequately protected through the development review process. And so in most cases, purchase may not be required. However, if the parcel is available at a low cost, we may want to take a look at it. And for example, we do monitor the tax sale notices from the Ventura County, and if some of these parcels in the third priority group come up on that list, we certainly may take a look at purchasing them if the price is reasonable. So what have we changed since the 2004 priority list? We have removed 2 areas from the 2004 list. We removed the Mount Clef Ridge area because, as I mentioned, those parcels were protected by the city in 2006 and 2007, and we removed the Potrero Ridge priority area because it was developed and 1 acre of that was protected as open space. This is the priority group 1, the listing of the areas and the acreages and number of parcels. This contains 465 acres in 356 parcels, and you'll notice the K Southern Ridge area has 356 acres and 315 parcels. There are many, many very, very small parcels, which is why you have the high parcel count here. And the priority group 2, which is the medium priority, has 11 parcels totaling 457 acres. And the third priority group, the lowest priority, has 109 acres composed of 5 parcels. So the total of our priority list is just over 1,000 acres and 372 parcels. And I should note that the list that I just reviewed does not contain the 3 revisions that staff is recommending tonight, which we'll discuss in a moment. This is the same map I showed before as a reminder of the priority areas, the red high, orange medium, and yellow low. I'm going to show you some photos of the areas to get you acquainted. And I'm going in order of priority group, however, they're not listed in any order within their priority group. So we're reviewing priority group 1. The Sunset North area. This is the road that you see in this photo is the Norwegian grade coming down here. This parcel is owned by the YMCA, and their building is on one small portion of the parcel, which we would not be interested in purchasing, obviously. Sunset North is composed of 2 separate parcels, actually, and this photo is of the of the second parcel. The road you see here is the 23 freeway, and the parcel here is all of this open space hill that you see. Or I'm sorry, it's natural land. It's not actually open space at this point. The Caneo Ridge area. This photo shows the Caneo Ridge in the distance. You may recognize this as City Hall, Civic Arts Plaza, where we are right now. There are several very small parcels here that are yet to be protected. They're both adjacent to the 101 freeway, which runs right in the background here. There's one parcel in this area, and then another small parcel somewhere in this vicinity here. The Skyline Addition area. This line here is the 101 freeway, and directly behind it is Willow Lane with the PTS Furniture building here. The many parcels of the Skyline Addition are in this general area here. The Southern Ridge area. This is a view of the eastern portion of it, also known to some people as Rasno Peak. And many of the parcels are here on this area, and then as well, many of our priority list parcels are on the back side of this ridge as well. And this is the area with lots of very small parcels. This is a view of the western end of the southern ridge. The Broome addition. This parcel is taken from Rancho Potrero. The small single parcel left on our priority list in the Broome addition area is right here between Rancho Potrero and Site I, which is this area covered with yellow flowers. Sunset Northeast area. This road that you can see is Olson Road. This parcel is currently considered for the SCE presidential substation, which in fact is proposed to be here. This parcel is also currently approved for, I believe, 6 homes, but its status is still currently in flux. This is another photo taken from the same spot of the same parcel. This area here is part of that parcel. The Westlake South area, these are 2 very large parcels surrounded by several different open space, Cosca open space areas. Most of what you see in this photo is the Westlake South priority area. Another view of the Westlake South priority area from the same spot, just looking a little bit more towards the south. The Herbs Road priority area parcels are approximately here on the edge of this hillside. This is the Canyon West area, which is in the Westlake portion of Thousand Oaks. Most of what you see in the middle ground of the photo is the Canyon West priority parcel. The Adventist Hill parcel, we have 1 parcel in this priority area. It's over in this area on the hillside of Adventist Hill. The South Shore Hills area is a single parcel. This photo is taken from pretty far away from this parcel, but it's in this general area, this little saddle right here in the background of the photo. The Vallecito area, we have 2 parcels on the list, on our priority list. One of them is shown right here in this area, and the other parcel is to the north here, not shown on this photo. These buildings here are the Vallecito Mobile Home Park, and we are looking west out towards Camarillo. I should mention that this is one of the areas where we are proposing to expand the area, and we'll talk about it more in a little bit. Also, the Westlake South area, which I showed a few slides ago, we're also proposing to add to. And the Lake Eleanor priority area, there is 1 parcel on our list here, and it's approximately this side of this hill just below the rocky outcrop here. And the parcel that we acquired, the 54-acre parcel from the Lake Sherwood Development Corporation, is just on the back side of this hill here. And that is now protected open space. So as I've been mentioning, staff's recommending 3 additions to the 2009 priority list. We are recommending a brand new area be added. We propose to call it Area U, the Simi Hills area, and that's 1 parcel that's 11.5 acres. We are also recommending 2 priority areas for expansion. The existing Vallecito area, we are proposing to add 2 parcels totaling 550 acres. This would be a very large addition to the Vallecito area. And in fact, perhaps should be called Caneo Mountain instead of Vallecito, and we can discuss that. The Westlake South area, we're proposing to add 2 parcels totaling 150 acres. This map here shows in purple the recommended additions to the priority list. The red parcels are the 14 areas that we've already been discussing in detail. The purple areas over here in Vallecito, down here in the Westlake South area, and a very small parcel here, the new Simi Hills proposed area. And now I'm going to turn it over to Cosca's Associate Planner, Shelley Austin, who will tell you a little bit more about our proposed additions.
Thank you, Ms. Ford. The first of the proposed additions is called up there Vallecito Addition, but again, we'd like to call it the Conejo Mountain Addition, so it the name better reflects sort of the terrain out there. So this is 2 parcels located in the west of the city limits, south of the 101 freeway. And if you look at the screen, the 101 freeway is just up here. Sorry, just up here. And it's within the CRPD boundaries and abuts the Dos Vientos open space, which is Dos Vientos open space is here. This would be a good addition to the ring of open space around the city, and it contains important archaeological resources, and also there's an SCE road that goes through the property under some high-tension SCE lines, and that basic road alignment is identified on our trail master plan as a proposed trail, which is part of the ring trail around the city. This area is also identified as an important wildlife corridor in the conservation element of the city's general plan, as well as in the South Coast Missing Linkages study and in verbal conversations with the National Park Service. They've also identified it as such. The terrain is steep and rocky, as you can kind of tell by this area with the topography over top. And it makes up the eastern and northeastern slopes of Conejo Mountain, which is the peak of Conejo Mountain is right over here. So here are the parcels. The next proposed addition is part of the Westlake South priority area, and it's located south of the city, north of Lake Sherwood within the CRPD boundaries. This is right here. And this property contains important archaeological resources as well, and the prominent vegetation types are oak woodland and chaparral. Also, within one of the parcels is a population of the endangered plant Lion's Peniquita. This is adjacent to the South Ranch open space. And here you can see the terrain of the property again. The parcels contain a prominent hilltop, which is visible from the Los Robles open space and from the trails on the Los Robles open space. The hilltop is not actually visible from the city limits, but a lot of our residents use the Los Robles trail, as you know. This is also an important wildlife corridor. The third addition is actually a proposed new area in the Simi Hills, and this is this parcel here, and it's north of Canaan Road in the Simi Hills of the North Ranch open space. The property contains a water tank and access road, as you might be able to see on there. And approximately 3/4 of the property are still in a natural state and could be preserved through purchase, donation, or a conservation easement. The terrain is a sloped hillside and actually contains a Cosca trail and a scenic viewpoint that the residents out there enjoy walking to, as well as trail users on the Hidden Meadows Trail. It also likely contains the endangered plant Bronton's milk vetch, which has been found in that area of the Simi Hills quite often. And with that, I will turn the presentation back to Ms. Ford. There's the terrain of the parcel again.
So some key background about the priority list. The list is dynamic, and it's meant to serve as a guide for potential open space purchases. It's really a policy statement, and it serves as a framework for the Cosca board or for the City Council of Thousand Oaks to act on potentially purchasing properties as they become available for sale. However, other areas may be considered for purchase as opportunities arise. As history has shown, many areas have been protected throughout the city that were never identified on Cosca's priority list, and that doesn't mean they're not important. They were just not identified for various reasons. And a key point to note is that in order for any purchase of open space to occur, there must be a willing seller. We must come to agreement on the purchase price, and there must be adequate funding sources available for the purchase, of course. So in conclusion, the draft priority list reflects past preservation actions and key potential future additions to Cosca's open space system and to the open space system in the Conejo Valley. So staff is seeking input from the public through this public workshop, and also we're seeking direction from the board on our draft list as well as our proposed additions. So after this meeting tonight, we will prepare the final 2009 priority list for your review and for your approval at the next board meeting. I should also note that at the next board meeting, when we present you with the final priority list for your approval, we also plan to seek approval to send letters to many of the landowners of these priority parcels to tell them that we may be interested in talking to them about potentially purchasing their property. And with that, I'm available for questions. Ms. Austin is also available, and we also have the former Cosca manager, Mark Town, here to answer historical questions. He was in charge of the 2004 priority list workshop as well as the 96 workshop, or not? Yep. And he is now the Deputy Director of Community Development for the city.
We do have two potential speakers, but did board members have any particular questions at this point?
I can wait until after the
Okay.
speakers.
Mr. Hetward, did you have any?
No, I just filled out the form because
Okay. Thank you.
I want to say something.
Great. Okay, thank you. Mr. Langton, did you have comments?
I'm on the board of the Conejo Open Space Foundation, which is a 501c3 nonprofit organization that helps raise funds for the various programs that the Trails Advocacy, the committee puts on. The question that I have, and not so much a comment, but a question in regards to the way that, specifically about what Ms. Austin was talking about as far as, and Ms. Ford were talking about as far as the availability of, and the purchase price, etc. What is the situation in terms of either in-kind donations or just general, deeding over of properties, and I guess I'm asking this of the Assistant City Attorney as well, what the foundation's position can be in terms of approaching potential sellers.
Why don't we have that as part of our discussion and ask
Okay.
the city attorney to address that?
That's fine.
Okay.
That was my one, because everything else looks good as far as the priority list. So
Okay.
thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Langton. Good question. No other public speaker cards, so let's open it up to the board for any comments or questions.
Late getting it in.
All right.
And I'm unsure a little bit about the format. I just have some questions, so are we...
That's fine. But please give your name for the record and...
Holly LaRue.
Okay. Use the one, Ms. Blue, the one over, over the television there.
As far as the additions, are those changing the priority then? Because some of them were on the third priority, and then there was some that were on the first priority. Does that change that? Or did I understand that correctly?
I actually should address that question. Thanks for asking, because I did not point out, I forgot to point out that we have a supplemental packet up there, and in that packet, staff has prepared a preliminary proposed priority group ranking for the 3 new additions that we're talking about. And so the board and the public should refer to that for our proposed new priority rankings after, if the board approves to add those in. And as well, we did prepare, and it's also in the supplemental packet, a evaluation criteria ranking. That's a score, basically a score based on all of the various open space resources, and each parcel is scored according to those many criteria. And then that score helps to guide staff in terms of ranking parcels in the priority group. So with the proposed additions, some of those additions have significant open space resource value, which in turn increases the parcel's evaluation score and then may lead to an increased priority ranking. I don't know if that answers your question or not.
Yeah, that helps. Thank you.
Okay.
And I would also add, actually, that for the proposed additions, based on the criteria scoring, the Vallecito, which is actually Vallecito area, which is actually Conejo Mountain area adjacent to the Vallecito Mobile Home Park, did move from the 3rd low ranking to the top first ranking.
That's really what I was...
Okay. And that's just a recommendation from staff. Okay. It's not actually an official move. That would be up to the board to decide.
Okay, thank you. And then maybe I missed it, but there's some property on Borchard that parallels the 101. I think it's on the south side. It's a wetlands property. Has that been considered, and what's the status of that property?
Since that parcel is in subject of litigation, we're not going to discuss it tonight.
Okay.
And I don't know if there's anything else we need to add to that, Mr. Hare.
I'll just add that, as Chairperson Sky just said, it is currently in litigation with various public agencies, and it would be inappropriate to discuss or even consider that property at this time.
Okay. Thank you.
Thank you.
Do you want my card?
Why don't you turn it into the staff, and then we'll have it handy. Thank you so much. Okay. And then for members of the audience, as Ms. Austin indicated, the proposed additions, the staff ranking is Conejo Mountain Vallecito as in the high group, Westlake South in the medium, and the Simi Hills water tank site as low. Okay. Questions or comments? Let me just jump in with, Mark, go ahead.
I'd like to make one comment. In looking at the maps, and they were certainly very descriptive and gave us a good insight as to the proximity to other areas of significance, I noticed in examining that several of the proposed either acquisitions or in some cases existing open space but our park system. And I would like to indicate that I will probably in tomorrow night's meeting request of our staff that they evaluate the potential for use of maybe a portion of the open space to enhance our existing park system. Some of the sites are undeveloped, such as that on Sapra and Morrow Circle, but yet they are adjacent to and abutting the proposed acquisition on one of your parcels. I don't remember the one exactly. However, if those particular sites which are undeveloped would lend themselves to development by utilizing a portion of the property that would be acquired originally, or as you proposed with open space, but would allow the utilization of that expanded acreage with a park, I would like our staff to evaluate that. The same thing applies in part to the Westlake properties where we have Triumphal Park and the potential for maybe either expansion or modification of the existing park boundaries. In other words, we're both serving the public, and I think that this would be an opportunity for us to say, if not now, at least in the future, it provides flexibility to the park district in developing a site or enhancing an existing site. So please be aware that I'll request that information of the staff, and maybe Mr. Friedel would even want to comment on that at this time. It's hitting cold, so.
I know it's tough from looking at the map. The priority acquisition parcels within the, at least the Westlake area, I think the map I'm looking at has them as Westlake South area and whatnot, are near but aren't physically adjacent to Triunfo Community Park. So at least for Triunfo specifically, that none of those proposed acquisitions are contiguous to the Triunfo Park. I think the park that you did mention, I believe we call it Morro Circle or Del Norte, is adjacent to the P open space. It's near the Seventh-day Adventist Church on Herbs.
That's called the Herbs Road area.
The Herbs Road area,
yes.
So that's what we're referring to it. The Park District does own a piece of property there behind the Mormon church that I believe is contiguous with
yes.
This open space area. So. But beyond that, I don't see necessarily any contiguous proposed acquisitions next to existing developed parklands.
Mm-hmm. I might mention that it's not necessary, I would think, to have parks or parcels of parks contiguous. It is conceivable that if it serves a purpose to either enhance or provide a recreational opportunity for that particular park facility, whether it's contiguous or not, I would like staff to evaluate that. It may be that it'll be only a trailhead, but it also could be something over and above what you normally think of as ball fields, but yet which would provide a recreational opportunity for people within the community. So I'm not asking for a delay nor lack of consideration. I'm just saying we would want to maybe ask staff to verify that there is not a need now or in the foreseeable future for a portion of that open space.
Okay.
And we can certainly do that analysis for the park board and let you know.
Thank you.
I just have a couple of observations off the bat. First, I do appreciate that staff emphasized that this list is not the cast in stone, hard and fast list, that if opportunities come up, if there are things that we're not aware of now or that we weren't expecting would ever become available, we definitely want to have the flexibility to jump on those opportunities. And then in terms of park, the trailhead improvements, trail improvements, that continues on even though it's not ranked in a list. That is part of our work program, is that correct?
Absolutely, yes.
Okay. And then finally, some of the areas that are really important, like the Southern Ridge and the Skyline area, as you pointed out, are going to be difficult because there are so many small ownerships, little tiny lots. I think the history, as Mr. Town can probably corroborate, is that a lot of those, especially even above Ventu Park, were encyclopedia sales, giveaway lots in the 1920s. You know, they were vacation home spots that were so tiny you couldn't really put a house on them, but a lot of people bought those. So, and those are areas, as you pointed out, that have may have some real opportunities for donations. And even though maybe one little lot won't make a difference, you can start adding on to those, and it can be very strategic. So Southern Ridge in particular, because that's a big gap between the Newbury Park area and our Los Robles Trail, and then over to the Hope open space. want to make sure that's always secured. Other comments? Director Bill de la Pena.
Thank you. I'd like to start out with Potrero Ridge, which, Ms. Ford, you said was developed and 1 acre was donated. Can you refresh my memory as to the location of that particular parcel that ended up being developed, which was on the priority list and then removed because it was developed?
Sure. I can tell you it was right in this area. I can go back and show you on. It's going to be.
Is that the one that came to the council about 2 months ago?
No, this would have been in perhaps 2005 or 2006. It must have gone. The name was originally Tone Yi. What was the final name for it, Mr. Town?
I think the name was Tone Yi. It's the tract at the south end of Walter Avenue. And I believe there were about 15 single-family dwellings, and it was a 1 acre parcel in the southeast corner that we picked up through dedication, which abuts the Potrero Ridge open space.
Okay, and then Site I was purchased. It was on the list, and you didn't mention that that was removed. Maybe I missed it. Perhaps you did say it.
Yes, we did remove that from the list, and so there is only 1 parcel remaining in the Broome Addition priority area right now.
Is that the one called West Bay Properties, owned by the Miller family?
That's correct. It's
not the developer Miller family, but another Miller family.
Yes, and it's just a small portion of that parcel that is on our priority list, because the rest of the parcel is outside the city's planning area, the city boundary, and the CRPD boundary. So therefore, it's outside of Cosca's jurisdictional area. The remainder of it's a very large parcel, so we've identified just 1 corner on the priority list.
And has the seller given any indication, I shouldn't say seller, owner given any indication that there might be a chance?
If I could just address that briefly. We haven't spoken with the Miller Property Trust about acquiring that property per se. It's about 20 acres. It's within the city's planning area on the south side of Lynn Road. Although they have repeatedly said over many years that they have no intention of developing it, no applications have been submitted to the county. It is still in the county. It's zoned for 160-acre minimum parcel size with a scenic resource protection overlay. So at this point, it's just vacant land. They're using it for ranching purposes, and that's apparently the way they want to keep it.
And that currently has a rating of 29 points, is it? Broome Addition, yeah, total points 29. That puts it in the medium category?
The categories are somewhat based on the evaluation criteria. It's a mix of the evaluation criteria score and other information that staff knows about the parcel in terms of the potential cost and the potential likelihood that the best open space resources will be protected through the development review process. So you could have a parcel that scores very high in open space resources, and so has a high evaluation score. But if we know that through the development review process, because, for example, all of the open space resources may be located in areas with very steep slopes, and therefore will be set aside and be required to be dedicated as open space anyway, we may rank that lower because we feel that the parcel can be adequately protected and the high-value resources can be protected through the development process, and therefore we don't need to seek to purchase the property because we trust that it will be will be protected through the development review process.
And the development review process comes into play when there is an application for development of that parcel, correct?
Exactly, yes.
Okay. So staff believes that we're better off allowing them to build and then put aside and set aside or donate land to the city.
For the low priority parcels, we do believe that most of the open space resources we're interested in will be set aside as open space during the development review process.
Okay. But part of this workshop, of course, not workshop, but the list
Sure.
is to prevent development from happening, correct?
For example, you may have a parcel.
As much as possible.
That's correct, to prevent development on the high-value open space resources. For example, you may have a parcel, let's say it's 10 acres, and 4 acres are already graded, they've been disturbed in the past. We know of no archaeological resources, no rare plants, nothing that we can identify as high open space resource value on that area because it's been previously degraded through historical use. However, there's a hill on the backside of the property, the remaining 6 acres, that's great. It's got fabulous open space resources. Because of the steepness of the hill, we feel pretty certain that if someone proposes to build homes on the 4 acres that we considered, low open space value because they've been degraded in the past, we feel certain that the remainder of the parcel, which is where the open space value is, will be protected. I'm sorry.
No, that's fine. Thank you. I do appreciate your candid answer. Of course, we may not ever have enough money to buy this particular parcel, and my opinion would be that to prevent development from happening, obviously, because it is right adjacent to Rancho Potrero, which the city and the Park District in Cosca worked so hard to acquire, and to have homes going up next to it, that would be unfortunate. But again, there are no plans to build any homes at this time. So my other question is Conejo Mountain. Is that the 600 acres? Is that what is owned by operating engineers? Because they have about 1,000 acres in that area that are not necessarily in our jurisdiction, or the
Right. The Conejo Mountain properties, one of them is still owned by the operating engineers, and one of them has been sold to another entity. And it is within, those properties are within the CRPD boundaries, but they're not within the city limits. So, does that answer your question?
Yes. They had mentioned a price a few years ago. They wanted to sell that. Are they still willing to sell?
I believe they did sell a portion of it. Operating engineers used to own the whole thing, and I'm not aware of the new owners or operating engineers being willing to sell, but somebody else might know. Marktown, do you know? I haven't heard.
We have not talked to operating engineers or the current owner of one of the parcels about actually purchasing those parcels. Hopefully, if the board approves this new priority list, then we would send out contact letters to explore that possibility. Or the other alternative could be acquisition of a conservation easement over all or a portion of it as well, which may be a little bit more cost effective. Also, if I just may go back one step, Vice Chair Bill LaPena, you were talking about this broom addition. I just wanted to point out that on page 45 of your packet is the newest priority list rankings, which I don't believe have really changed, except for the areas that staff is proposing to add. But the broom addition is in the highest priority group, and it has been for some time. So the area that we were talking about just a few minutes ago, the broom addition area L, if you note, it's in that top priority group. So it is an area where we feel purchase is appropriate to fully protect it. The areas that Ms. Ford was referring to are in the category 3, where the development review process typically would protect, say, 80–90% of the entire property. But in that specific case, we consider it a highest priority and worthy of potential purchase with a willing seller.
Thank you. And then the other question is perhaps better answered by the assistant city manager, perhaps the city attorney, assistant city attorney. We're changing how we're funding open space acquisition due to the economic crisis that we're currently experiencing. And now, correct me if I'm wrong, we took already one step, the council, that is, to vote not to fund the open space fund anymore. And is there now a second step that we're taking, what we discussed last week, not to put $100,000 into that particular fund for open space acquisition anymore?
Correct. That is a discussion the council had to not make an operating transfer from the general fund to the open space fund. The open space fund still gets funds from the golf course and a small amount from a bed tax, which has to do with something that we passed probably 30 years ago to put towards open space. So the fund has about $1 million or so in it now, after we made the last purchase of Side Eye.
Okay, so we're now not putting $100,000, we're not transferring $100,000 into that particular fund.
Correct. That'll be our recommendation for the next 2-year budget, which the council will be hearing in June. We are not putting that, we're recommending not to have that included in as a transfer for the next 2 fiscal years.
And what did we vote on earlier in the year, or perhaps it was actually last year or last winter?
Correct. It was in July of 2008.
Is that the same thing, or was that a different sort of funding
no,
for that?
No, it's the same transfer.
Okay.
So we voted not to do it in 2008-9 fiscal year and recommending the next 2 years as well.
I see. Okay. So the only money that we are earning with this particular fund is through interest and whatever else comes in, as you mentioned?
Yes.
And currently we have about $1 million in that fund?
Correct.
And is the plan the council hasn't voted on it yet for the new budget, but would the staff recommendation in the future be that be restored, maybe retroactively?
Sure, that's one of the things that would be considered when the economy gets better and we're able to restore things. That's probably one of the first things the council would want to add back in.
The last time we discussed this, in 2004, was it? We mentioned that it would take about $50 million or more in order to purchase all of the parcels. So has that number changed? Have you revised that number?
That's a good question. We have not revisited that number. That ballpark figure is correct. That was an estimate that we put on it last go around. We haven't done it this time. I suppose the key point is that there's a lot more need than there are dollars, and that's why we've tried to be so selective in identifying the areas where purchase is really warranted. And as the board well knows, 2 key areas where we felt that use of public dollars was appropriate was Side Eye and the Mount Cliff Ridge areas. So a lot more need than dollars.
And then one final question. Of all of these parcels on the list, which one do you feel is the most threatened by development?
Is that question for areas within the highest priority group or overall?
Overall.
Okay, if you could just bear with me for a moment. I would have to say that of all the areas, probably Sunset North would be the one area. We do have an application that has been submitted for one house on the eastern portion of that area. It was in one of the slides that Ms. Ford showed. It's that sort of ridgeline area on the west side of the 23 freeway and north of Sunset Hills area and northeast of Kenyatta Park. And it's a 30-acre parcel, so we have an application for one house on it. That application has not been accepted as complete, but we anticipate that the applicant will come back and refine the plan and continue with their proposed development. And that area, that is a priority 1 area. And I'm looking at, again, at page 45, the updated priority table. So that's Sunset North. And that's one of the 2 areas. The other area is on the west side. That's a portion of the YMCA parcel. There's no threat there.
And that is one house on that parcel?
That is what has been proposed, yes.
Okay, thank you.
Mr. Gibson.
Yeah, just a couple of questions, Kristen. You indicated, while we're talking about the Sunset North property, the portion that was west of Norwegian Grade, did you indicate that was it was the YMCA parcel or adjacent to the YMCA parcel that's on the list?
The parcel that's on the list is owned by the YMCA.
Okay.
One of the two parcels in that priority area.
Okay. Another question, with regards to the memo that we got from Debbie Millay and Christine Danko from the county regarding habitat linkages, how do we account for in our criteria habitat migration corridors?
That's an excellent question. We did get a comment from the county planning staff suggesting that we consider and give a higher priority to regional wildlife corridors in our rankings on the priority list. However, in fact, the evaluation criteria scores do include two factors that take wildlife corridors into account. The wildlife habitat value score, the highest ranking in that, which is 3 points for wildlife habitat value, is given for parcels with important nesting sites, foraging areas, or regional migratory corridors. Or actually, it does not say the word regional, or migratory corridors. Also, important habitats containing high wildlife species diversity. So if a parcel is in a wildlife corridor, it would get a score of 3, which is the highest score for wildlife habitat value. In addition, the open space ring value score, which is another score, parcels would score high on this factor if they had a wildlife corridor. And we have 2 scientific reports which provide us information about the wildlife corridors. We have large-scale regional wildlife corridors. We had that information from the report called the Missing Linkages Report, which is the report the county staff referenced in their comment. We also have the City of Thousand Oaks General Plan conservation element, also identifies wildlife corridors on a more local scale and identifies quite a number of wildlife corridors. So after receiving the county staff's comment, we did actually update all of the evaluation scores for all of the parcels to include this new scientific information from particularly from the Missing Linkages Report, which is new information since 2004. So we have updated our rankings, our evaluation scores based on that information on wildlife corridors.
Right. One other comment is really not the point on the agenda with this item to cover it, but I would like to revisit some funding options, considering that, the city's not putting the types of funding in that they have historically. Specifically, I think, I brought up at our CRPD board meeting the possibility of doing formal mitigation banking, to where we could acquire funds for the purchase of lands from other development throughout the state. And then our general manager is aware, because we sat in a restaurant in Lake Tahoe to where people could, at the bottom of their dinner ticket, donate money to the open space agency up there. And they raised over $1 million a year.
Wow.
Which I thought we passed that on. So literally at the bottom it says, would you like to save open space, yes or no? Write in the amount. That much goes to the open space agency. So I'd like to revisit those in the future. So.
Any other board comments or questions? Go ahead, Director Bill De La Pena.
I like that idea at the end of the dinner ticket. Not bad. Sure beats a survey on raising taxes. On the categories here in the supplemental draft, is the ring concept value category a new one? No, it's been there for a while. Okay.
All of these, all of the evaluation and criteria. The evaluation criteria as well as the various scores for those within the criteria were approved by the board in 1992 and really haven't changed since that point.
Thank you.
Well, I think your staff is looking for direction, and you got comments, and I didn't hear any, real objections to properties were on the proposed list. But so I would suggest that we direct staff to go forward and finalize this and bring it back at our next meeting. Do we need a motion for that, or you just want to take?
Yeah, sure. We'll have a motion, please.
I don't have any other speaker cards from the public, but last chance. Yeah, you can fill a card out afterwards, but go ahead and give your name for the record, please.
I'm Steve Bacharach, and I was curious about, I think it was parcel D. It's a high priority. It's the Sunset North, right?
Yes.
Why is it that those two separate parcels are really one space? It seems like they could be separated, and then one would be a higher priority, one would be lower. I don't know if that'd be more efficient. I just wonder why.
Go ahead. I think that's a good point. I'll let Mr. Town answer that.
In my historical perspective, originally, that was all one area called Sunset North, from the YMCA all the way over to the parcel I was referring to before, that included a large area that was subsequently acquired by the Conejo Recreation and Park District. That area is not shown on this exhibit as open space per se, because that is still subject to this Park District's approval process of their master plan and the finalization of any plans that they have for that area. But what ended up happening was the center portion ended up being part of McRae Ranch, and so we ended up with these two area Ds that are now spatially separated. So it's not an inappropriate comment to maybe reconsider either relabeling these or at least having different subcategories, because there are really different parcels, different histories, different threats, as we talked about before.
They have different priority values, too, as far as their acquisition and their potential development.
Well, the Sunset North area we always felt was a high priority because it's an important part of this wildlife corridor on the north side of the valley in part. It has important scenic value, trail value. So that's why it's always been in the top priority group.
Okay, thanks.
Thank you very much. You give your card to the staff. All right. Oh, Mr. Gibson.
Yeah, if I could speak to that item as well. I tend to agree with the speaker a little bit, especially considering that the YMCA parcel is deed restricted for use. And if it's anything other than a YMCA, it reverts back to the McRae family. We could bifurcate that from the other parcel the 30-acre parcel. I think the potential for the Y to develop all that, and if they would want to come forward with the development down the road, I think the ability to, enter into a conservation easement for a large portion of that property that we feel is really undevelopable anyway, and let them sort of have their footprint area would be workable. So I'd like to have staff consider that as well.
Okay. Well, thank you all very much, and thank you to the audience for being here, too, and the comments we got. I really appreciate that. We will see this back at our next or a subsequent meeting. Let's go on to item 6B, which is the Open Space Trails Advisory Committee.
Madam Chair, if I may just interrupt.
Yes, sir.
Just to get to the gentleman's question that he actually posed earlier before we change the next subject. Again, I can't speak on behalf of the foundation. I'm not the attorney for the foundation itself, so I can't give them legal advice. But as far as, if I understand the question correctly, as far as providing information to Cosca about potential parcels to purchase and to investigate, that's certainly a possibility. As far as the donations that might be available, certainly individuals can donate to Cosca parcels, but they need it for, and there may be tax benefits that may accrue from such a donation, but they would need to acquire their own advice from the tax consultant about the taxes and all the implication for that. But if I did not understand the question, I certainly will be available after, and we can talk about it.
Thank you. Item 6B, COSTEC appointments. Ms. Austin.
Thank you, Madam Chair, and I would direct the board's attention to the PowerPoint. This is for the 2009 COSTEC appointments. The board authorized staff to initiate the annual COSTEC selection process administratively on March 14th, 2007. Staff directed the city clerk's office to begin the 2009 recruitment process for 3 vacancies on March 5th. The vacancy notice was posted on March 11th. And we had our biggest response ever to this vacancy notice, and we got 18 applications to the committee, which was amazing. And interviews were conducted by myself and Cosca manager Kristen Ford, April 28th through May 1st. The interview panel then provided guidance to the nominations subcommittee, which is composed of Chairperson Rory Skay, CRPD General Manager Jim Friedel, and Kristen Ford. And the nominations subcommittee recommends the following members and alternates. For members, the first recommendation is Richard Koppel. He's an active Cosca volunteer who is currently serving as the coordinator of the Adopt a Trail program, which is one of Cosca's volunteer programs. The second recommendation is Paul Smith. He's an incumbent member, actually. He's on COSTEC currently, and he is an extremely active Cosca volunteer who is currently serving as the Trail Watch program coordinator, which is another one of Cosca's volunteer programs. He also is a volunteer hike leader for CRPD's Open Space Appreciation Hikes, which they're sponsored by CRPD, but they, of course, go through the open space trails. The third recommendation is Nancy Taylor, who is one of the founding members of COSTEC. She was on COSTEC for 5 years, and she's an equestrian and longtime open space advocate. The subcommittee is recommending that 4 alternates be appointed this year. The first is Steve Bacharach, who you heard comment a little earlier. He's an avid mountain biker and trail runner who works as a high school math teacher. The second is Linda Lee, who is an avid hiker and trail runner also, and she is a Greenbelt efficiency expert at Ventura County, where she works. So you never know how she can help us with efficiency. The third recommendation is Doug Nichols, and you might recognize his name as he's a former Cosca planner who was actually the staff person who helped form COSTEC back in 1988. He's an active hiker and mountain biker. And then the fourth alternate is William Ruck, and he's a local general contractor who enjoys hiking and is an avid geocacher. So, with the board's approval, the COSTEC members and alternates will be notified of their appointments, and with that, staff is available for questions. Thank you.
Questions or a motion? Director Bill de la Pena.
Thank you. Just 2 questions. Would Mr. Ruck, is that how you pronounce his name, be our first geocacher?
He's the first one who we've identified as a geocacher, but actually a longtime member, Bert Elliott, is a big geocacher also, but we didn't used to really identify that as a trail user group. So.
I see. Thank you. And is this a recommendation that you gave to the subcommittee and the subcommittee agreed, or have there been changes?
This is the recommendation that the interview panel gave to the subcommittee, and the subcommittee agreed, yes.
Excellent, thank you. And then with that, I move staff recommendation.
All right, we have a motion. Do we have a second? Second. Mr. Jacobson seconds. Any other discussion? All in favor, please say aye. 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 Any objections or abstentions? Motion carries, and congratulations to the new COSTEC members and alternates. We really appreciate the tremendous service that COSTEC gives us. Okay. And our next item is the item 6B, authorization to transfer Lynn Road drainage channel to the City of Thousand Oaks, located on the west side of Lynn Road at the corner of Jantz Road. Ms. Austin?
Thank you, Madam Chair, and I would again direct the board's attention to the PowerPoint presentation. This drainage channel is located in the northwest corner of Lynn Road and Jans Road, in the southeast corner of Wildwood Park on Cosca-owned open space. Here's a location map, and this is where the drainage channel is located. This is Lynn Road here, Los Robles Hospital here, and Jans Road is here. And this, of course, is Wildwood Park. The area proposed for transfer is 40 feet wide by approximately 1,000 feet long, and it's adjacent to the west side of the Lynn Road public right-of-way. Here is an aerial view of the improvement area. It's actually covered with black because we wanted to show the actual area that's included. But you can see this, again, is Wildwood Park here, Los Robles Hospital, and then Lynn Road and Jans Road. The concrete drainage channel is approximately 15 feet wide by 1,000 feet long, and the channel slopes down to the northwest, directing stormwater and runoff away from Lynn Road. Here's a picture of the improvement, and here you're looking south down Lynn Road towards Jans Road. Again, you're looking south here. This is just a little bit further to the north, looking south. And then this is looking north, up Lynn Road. This drainage channel was installed in the 1960s as part of the Lynn Road widening project, which was required for the approval of Tract 1820. The property was originally owned by the Jans Corporation and was sold to the Klingbeil Company in the 1970s. In 1984, the Klingbeil Company transferred the property to the city with a number of other sort of remnant parcels that were considered undevelopable at the time. The city then transferred the property to Cosca in 1996. The City Public Works staff agrees that city ownership and maintenance of the channel are appropriate. The Public Works Department maintains these improvements throughout the city, and the city did not actually intend to transfer the drainage channel to Cosca when they transferred the property. It appears to be part of the public right-of-way if you just look at it in the field, so I think it was just sort of an oversight. And of course, Cosca is not equipped to maintain these types of infrastructure improvements. As you know, Cosca generally does not accept land containing improvements, and the transfer of this drainage channel to the city will clarify the maintenance responsibility. With the board's approval, staff will work with the Public Works staff to process and record the grant deed for this transfer. And staff recommends that the board authorize staff to transfer approximately 1 acre of land containing the Lynn Road drainage channel to the city of Thousand Oaks. And with that, I'm available for questions.
Okay. Director Bill Delapena.
Move approval of the staff recommendation.
Thank you.
Thanks.
Seconded by Mr. Gibson. Question, Mr. Jacobson.
Yes. At each end of the drainage channel, what happens to the stormwater and the runoff? Where is it routed, and what kind of impact does it potentially have on our property or on the Wildwood Park property?
The storm drain at the south end comes out from under Jans Road and is depositing the runoff, basically. And then at the north end, where it goes into Wildwood Park, I'm not sure. I think it just naturally dissipates, but I am not quite sure. I could get back to you on that unless another staff member knows.
Perhaps I can augment that. I'm almost certain that at the north end of this channel it goes into a culvert, and then it daylights just opposite West Sidley. There's an area that is a confluence of storm drain outlets, and I'm almost certain that that's where it outlets. You can see that on page 92 in terms of it outletting a bit to the north, probably a couple hundred feet at least. It's undergrounded and then daylights.
All right, so it's undergrounded and would not create a storm water passage over the property or uncontrolled in its disposition.
No, I wouldn't think that it would have any adverse impacts on Wildwood Park.
Thank you.
Okay. Other questions on the motion? Hearing none, all in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Any objections or abstentions? Motion carries. Thank you. And I think that brings us to the end of our agenda. Oh, no, it doesn't. I'm sorry. We have a staff report on the Arbor Earth Day and Cosca outreach.
Thank you, Madam Chair. The Arbor Earth Day event was held on April 25th, and it was held at Caneo Creek North Park, and Cosca had a booth, as did Cosca and the Open Space Foundation. It was a huge success. The event was very well attended, and at the Cosca booth we had a tarantula, live tarantula, I think 3 different kinds of snakes, and a number of pelts. And our rangers staffed the booth most of the time, and it was extremely popular because kids and adults love to see live animals. And then adjacent, or right next to our booth, was the Cosstack and Kossuth booth, and they had a game that had a line of 15 to 20 people who wanted to play it the whole time, and it was basically an open space quiz game, and there was a wheel that had different prizes you could win on it, and then you just had to answer an open space question in order to win a prize. And it was hugely popular, and I think it helped people to learn more facts about the open space. So it was a good event overall.
Thank you, and thanks to all of you for staffing it. Any other questions? Are there any board member comments? Hearing none, looks like we will adjourn until our next scheduled meeting, which is July 8th. Thank you all very much.